Hello guys, and welcome to Hangout number 93 with the International Force Rope Timeline. This one is called Exculpatory Evidence. On the subject of exculpatory evidence, I was, well, first of all, I was hoping to go live. I was actually hoping to go live on somebody else's channel. I got an email from Shaun Attwood, somebody from his address, his assistant, saying, would I like to go on a channel and discuss the innocence of Jimmy Savile. It was meant to be Wednesday last week and nothing materialised. I got a further email Saturday saying they were trying to line up someone. It sounds like it could be John Wedger, which could be fun. John Wedger is a former police officer who, well, take what he says with a pinch of salt, or maybe a boulder, when it comes to sex offences. But it may go ahead. It depends. On the subject of Jimmy Savile, this is exculpatory evidence. Just for those of you who haven't watched my video, The Truth About Jimmy Savile, or haven't logged on to that excellent blog, Jim Cannot Fix This, by a guy called More Larkin. And if you haven't seen the Andrea Cohen blog by the late Suzanne Lundy stroke Cameron Blackie. Basically, Savile was totally framed. It was total. This nonsense, leaving aside the usual stuff about celebrities, false allegations against celebrities, this actually started in 2007 when a group of women had been at Duncroft School in the 1970s and indeed the 1960s made false allegations against Savile. He was questioned by the police. So police travelled to the spine unit at that hospital at Aylesbury, was it? I'm really losing the plot. And they questioned him there, and he debunked all the allegations. And after his death, these allegations were simply recycled. And there's all sorts of dodgy things going on there. There was a forged letter on Surrey Police headed notepaper, well, old notepaper apparently, which said Savile hadn't been prosecuted because he was aged and infirm. But basically, you think if this guy had been sexually abusing and raping girls and young women for decades, you think there would be at least one contemporaneous police report, one medical report? No? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. In this connection, you might like to watch my video I uploaded July 25th. It's at the internet archive now, as well as YouTube. It's called How the Police Convict People of Imaginary Crimes. It explains all about this delay and how they trawl for victims. So anyway, Savile, I did at one point think there must be some fire behind the smoke, but when you see all this smoke, the thing you should ask is not, can there be no fire, but who's creating all this smoke? And it was basically done by these women, by Mark Williams Thomas and a corrupt media. Now I have to give some credit to the BBC, because initially they weren't taken in by it. But if you listen to play my video, and the stuff, there's links on my main website to and on the Force Rope Timeline to official reports from hospitals, because when this nonsense really took off, hospitals up and down the country trawled through their archives and they found absolutely nothing. And this idea that he was hiding in plain sight, they said the same thing about Rolf Harris hiding in plain sight. Well, there was nothing to hide. That's what, they were there. And if a report is delayed, then it doesn't require evidence. Only, as I've said this again and again and again, all it requires is a story and maybe a few tears. So let's see. exculpatory evidence concerning Jimmy Savile. Now let's look at a few other cases. This is an article from an Indian website called News 9. As I've said many times before, rape in India can be more broadly defined. It can be what we used to call seduction in the West. This is from August 5th. Grown-up married lady accustomed to sex did not offer resistance. Orissa High Court acquits a man accused of raping sister-in-law. Being a married lady and accustomed to sexual intercourse, if the act was without her consent, she could have protested or resisted. And in that event, not only would there have been some injuries on the body of the appellant, but also on her own body as well, since it was alleged to be a forcible intercourse. The Orissa High Court observed while acquitting a person charged with raping his sister-in-law. I might, stress might include this on the timeline. Yes, rape leaves physical evidence, very often on the perpetrator, a scratched face or something. Yeah, I might include that, I don't know. And I've got something here about clothing damage. Yes, forensic science is very good at detecting false allegations of rape and improving genuine ones. This is on the timeline from May 2000. This file contains 2 articles from the Journal of Forensic Science, May 2000. The clothing damage analysis and the phenomenon of the false sexual assault by Jane Moira Torpin, and on the assessment of children in suspected child sexual abuse in light of Dorbert and Fry, limitations of profile interviews as scientifically grounded evidence by Brian J. Bigelow. Yeah, Dorbert and Fry, that's American case law. The Fry test is superseded by the Dorbert test. They're both on the timeline. That regard to the admissibility of expert evidence. Rape trauma syndrome, which does not exist, fails both the Fry test and the later Dorbert test, although sometimes prosecutors will be able to sneak it in. They did that to Bill Cosby, who in my humble opinion is innocent, totally innocent, and also to Harvey Weinstein, who was a pig but is a serial rapist. So I mean, it's basically rape trauma syndrome is a method of affirming any allegation of rape. I must apologise, however ludicrous. And there's an entry in the timeline here from October 19, 2007. Philip Webster was the finance director of Hull City Football Club. He was convicted of raping his 14-year-old stepdaughter, but his conviction was quashed on appeal. And one of the reasons was it would have been difficult for him to have, considering what she was wearing and where the rape was meant to have taken place, it would have been nigh on impossible to do it. And of course there was no physical evidence. There never is in these cases. So that's something else. Now there's a case here on the timeline. Let me see. Yes, this is a married woman named Janet Baugh, or Baugh, B-A-U-G-H. She's on the timeline of June 1989. There's a report of her being sentenced, of her being committed for trial by jury. But the main story, which made the front page of the Thanet Times for November 20th, 1989. This was when this is about her conviction. I haven't put this on the timeline because although I can just about make out the text, I need to get a better quality. I don't know how I'm going to do that. A woman claimed she'd been raped after she thought a man she had sex with had been too rough. As a result, Mrs. Janet Margaret Baugh, I don't know how that's pronounced, untrue allegation. Mr. Stephen Dyson spent 15.5 hours in custody, 37 hours of police time were wasted, and £256 was spent on doctor's fees. Canterbury Crown Court heard. Baugh, 28 of Arthur Road, Cliftonville, admitted making a false report of rape with intent to pervert the course of justice. And she got probation, yeah. Putting her on probation for 2 years, Judge John Streeter told her, just think what an appalling allegation it is. Yeah, he said she needed psychiatric help, of course, because she's really a victim. But this is interesting. She'd been living with her husband in I suppose a boarding house you'd call it. And where is it here? Her husband was a steward on the ferries and was away for a lot of these times. She was unemployed. Following a claim that Mr. Dyson, a fellow it says resident, it should be resident. There's no yeah, he says read dent. It's definitely not. I'm definitely not misreading that. Yes. Oh yeah, he's an S. Yeah. very poor quality. Fellow resident who raped her. Baugh was examined by a doctor who found she had an injury on her right breast consistent with having been bitten, and also she had recently had sexual intercourse. But when Baugh, a large woman, claimed she was dragged along a corridor, the doctor became suspicious because she had no marks on her wrists. She made a 13-page statement saying she and others, they've been drinking basically in one of the rooms in the boarding house. So when she tried to follow the others who were going swimming, as she would do, Mr. Dyson prevented her and indecently assaulted her. She was taken, not dragged, to his room, where she alleged she was raped. The following day, when it was put to her that it was not the first time she had made such allegations, she admitted it had been with her consent. So I don't know if she's some sort of accuser. She was worried about her marriage and made a false claim she'd been raped. Mr. Mervyn Street. Now this is definitely misspelled. It should be. I think it should be Streetfield. It's Streetfield, something like that. Defending said that Baugh had seen a psychiatrist, threw herself into the court's mercy. She had begun her course of conduct fairly recently after the dock strike, when she and her husband got into debt and had to sell the house. She needed help. Yeah, I have sympathy for her losing her home, but not for what she did afterwards. So this, I mean, it's amazing what the police can do and forensics can do with, nowadays we've got CCTV and phones and all sorts of stuff, but in that time, 1989, phone evidence wasn't, and forensics were nowhere near as advanced as they are today. So it's quite amazing that they can do this and save an innocent man from, a rapist are treated in prison. This isn't a false rape allegation, but it was shaping up to be one. This is on the timeline at June the 21st, 2021. I added it, I think that July 21st this year, if I remember. It's very recent anyway. She's a lawyer. Fatima Imran. The entry on the timeline reads, an employment tribunal dismisses in total allegations made by Fatima Imran against her former employer and a dude who worked there. Linklaters is a massive international law firm, and she was employed at the London office. This is no rape case, but a plethora of allegations, including lesser sexual assaults and sexual harassment. Although this was not a criminal trial, she had made a police statement. They didn't think much of her, seeing particular paragraph 36. Having said that, things might have turned out differently but for the CCTV evidence. Paragraph 36 of the judgment. This is an employment tribunals held 15th to 17th and 18th at in Chambers before Employment Judge Brown. Have I paragraph 36? Paragraph 36, yeah. DC Bell then showed Ms. Gillespie CCTV footage which the police had obtained of the claimant collecting a coat and leaving the restaurant on January 31st, 2019. DC Bell observed that the CCTV footage contradicted the claimant's allegations. He mentioned that the police were considering soft challenging or formally interviewing the claimant under caution if no further evidence was produced, but said the police would be reluctant to prosecute due to the claimant's mental health condition and the risk of deterring other women from going forward about such matters. Every time, the real victim isn't some sap who's been falsely accused. It's some woman, some hypothetical woman who at some future date may be afraid to report a rape because she's terrified she won't be believed. As if the bruises and the cuts and the vagina full of semen isn't good enough. I mean, just ludicrous. So she lost her claim there. The CCTV, I mean, we do rail against. I mean, we don't want too much surveillance. Obviously, we don't want like Orwell screens in your bedroom, in your living room, and everywhere. But I mean, it's brought so many murderers and terrorists to book, and rapists, and saved so many innocent people. Not just men accused of rape, but people accused of all sorts of things, and as other things as well. I mean, there's, you know, it could monitor for fire and flood and all sorts of things. Well, there's fires, massive fires in Hawaii at the moment, and we shouldn't shy away from technology. But I say, and the other thing is that it catches the police out a lot as well. So that's Fatima Imran, who I don't think will be working for law firms at any time in the near future. This is on the timeline as well. This is fairly recent, June 2022, so it's fairly recent. It's from a Caribbean newspaper, the Tribune. Woman in jail for making false rape report, and it's a 57-year-old calls wasting employment police resources, but claiming she should be raped by a police officer in a cell. How stupid can you get? How stupid can you get? There are a few of those actually, and there's actually a case with Greater Manchester Police of being accused of indecently, or well, perhaps this woman claims to have been raped, and for once there appears to be some sort of supporting evidence. She was a drug user or something. She was stripped, and they should use only female officers for this sort of thing. I saw it on the news recently. Having said that, you have to be careful because you only get one side of it, and much as I distrust the police, the idea that police officers routinely rape women, and that, I mean, one police officer, yeah, but a group of them, you know, you gotta be wary of that. There's another report here about clothing. Is that it's the this is the journal I mentioned earlier. Yeah, there's a few more of those. I'll dig them out at some point, but most of them are journals. You need a subscription, and they're bloody expensive. Oh, no, this is a good one here. This is Leah Blagg. I've added this fairly recently as well. I found this in the Sun, which was not much of a report there. It was just a mention. What is it? I found it in Newsbank. The mother of two falsely claimed to be raped has been jailed for 7 months. I dug out the local press report. I tried the Lincolnshire Echo. It wasn't in there, I don't think. But anyway, this is the Lincoln Chronicle and County Standard, June the 30th, 2000, page 3. Jail for a woman who cried rape. A woman who cried rape after she was left disappointed by a one-night stand has been jailed for 7 months. I caught her that her mother of two, Leah Blagg, 22, had sex with pub doorman Alan Jews, Jewes, within hours of meeting him. But she falsely accused him of rape and left him to endure a terrible ordeal after feeling let down by the way he treated her. The judge told her a charade had struck at the heart of the justice system and damaged the cause of genuine rape victims every time, without fail, every time. A Lincoln Crown Court heard how Mr. Jews agreed to take Blagg home after they met at the Green Dragon pub, which is extant apparently. On the way, the pair stopped at an isolated industrial unit for a quick shag. No, it doesn't say that. But later, Blagg, still clutching her underwear, arrived home in tears and told her babysitter she'd been raped. And his clothing was seized. He was subjected to the indignity of having intimate samples taken from him. She gave a 9-page statement to police. She claimed to have been crying her eyes out and was pinned down against her will at the industrial estate. He strongly denied her allegations, was charged with rape and held in custody for 15 hours, appeared before magistrates in Lincoln, bailed to an address outside the city. Blagg kept up the charade for 2 weeks before she went to the police station and withdrew her allegations. So, this is, exculpatory evidence is a false conviction, a confession of a false allegation. The question I asked was, she's 22 years old, the mother of 2. Why is she out clubbing? Presumably she's a single mother, or her husband's away. Or of course, there's all this stuff about she's suffering from postnatal depression at the time of the incident after the birth of her second child. Why is she out clubbing? Yeah, why? So yeah, a surprising number of women that do actually. I mean, as I've said before, most women aren't total cunts, unlike feminists who mostly are total cunts. Caitlin Moran has apparently shown a state of heart, a change of heart. But I like what's that woman? What's her name? Proud. That barrister Proudman, Charlotte Proudman. She's physically gorgeous. You know, she's like 95 out of 100. Or maybe 990 out of 1,000, but she's a total cunt. Stay away from women like that. Right, this is. I like this one. Yeah, this is from 1992. Taxi rapes. How to spot a bogus cabbie. Taxi drivers reacted in horror today. This is on the timeline, by the way. At the thought that 3 rapes in London black cabs were carried out by licensed members. The rapists, this isn't John Warboys, by the way, this is before John Warboys. The rapists who have struck over the past 12 days are still at large, and the leader of one of the London's largest taxi organisations, the Joint Radio Taxi Cab Association, said, "We find it difficult to believe these attacks were the work of licensed drivers." Last Friday, a 25-year-old woman was raped twice after hailing a taxi at Leicester Square. That's the initial report. And there's a follow-up. Police dropped taxi rape case. Police have dropped inquiries into a 25-year-old woman's claim she was raped at gunpoint by a black man. He had to be black, didn't he? Driving into London taxi. The woman said she took a black cab from Leicester Square to Southgate last Friday. She said that at Wood Green, the driver pulled up, got in the back, produced a revolver and raped her. After forensic tests, police say they're no longer pursuing the investigation. Now the forensic tests are revealed in another article. This is A Far Cry from the Truth, ? By Isabel Tang, examining the case of false rape allegations. And it appears that, in fact, Julie Bindle is quoted this little monster. Yeah, this is a forensic test. She said this is Detective Chief Inspector Peter Camilletti at Hornsey. She said she was taken into an alley, and that after he had raped her, he turned the cab around and drove back. But when we put a car down there and tried to turn it around, we couldn't. We had to reverse out. Then there was a newspaper she claimed she bought in the West End. From the circulation batch, we knew it was a North London one. So it's little things like that. Parts of the story were not hanging together. So it's amazing what they could do when they put their minds to it. They didn't do that for Jimmy Savile, and especially Rolf Harris. And this has to be one of my favourites. I think I did this under rape jokes. This goes back a few decades. A New York City employee won $10,000 in state Supreme Court after he gave a convincing demonstration of his argument that he had been falsely accused, he had been falsely sued for rape. Yeah, this is Jeffrey Gordon, a 30-year-old accountant with the New York City Comptroller's Office, was arrested last year and charged with first-degree rape. When the grand jury refused to indict him, Gordon sued the woman who brought the charge against him, 20-year-old Andrea Cohen, for $2.5 million for alleged libel and slander. Miss Cohen testified on Wednesday during the one-day non-jury trial that when she was raped, she had pulled at Gordon's hair. At that point in the testimony, Gordon stood up and removed his toupee. Justice Angelo Roncello directed that £10,000 settlement, saying he didn't believe the alleged rape ever happened. It's no laughing matter really, but that's one of my favourites. But if the police do set their minds to it, they can do some spectacular work. Not just the rape cases, but all sorts of cases. At the moment I'm writing something about the Settee case in passing. The way they sold the murder of Stanley Settee. That was like in 1949. Well, they've got all the tools now, and really it's I mean, stranger rape should be, certainly in cities, should be virtually non-existent, and when they do happen, the perpetrator should be brought to book more or less at once. So that's exculpatory evidence. You'll find a lot more cases like that on the timeline, especially CCTV and modern technology. So I'll put this together, and maybe I'll be live at some time fairly shortly, perhaps even with Shaun Attwood.